Are you ready for the July updates from my collection to see what plants are doing well? I'll give you some of my feedback in terms of what has worked, what hasn't worked. And yeah, let's just do a bit of a show and tell. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So, as I said, this is going to be the July update from my collection. I think I'm going to start doing these at the very beginning of the month, if I can. Do not hold me to that promise, because I am useless when it comes to keeping to a schedule. But yeah, I had some really exciting things that I wanted to show you and talk you through, and yeah, without further ado, let's just look at some of these things, shall we? So the first thing I wanted to show you and talk to you about, this has done super well. Not that long after I did the unboxing, you might already be able to see it. I mean, from the adenium that I got from that one unboxing, and I'll link the video at the top, where we had a couple of the blooms that kind of dropped off, and those I could not take claim for. These, however, I will 100% take claim for, at least partially. This plant didn't have all of these as buds as when it first came to me, but it has grown to an obscene amount of blooms, and it does, by the way, go all the way around. It's insane. Question for anybody? I do not think this smells, but I might be telling you something that everybody already knew, but I'm one of the... I was that weird kid that used to go around in fields and in nature and be smelling all the flowers, and I'd get really excited when something had a scent, whether it's good or bad, but I'm just a bit like, ooh, does it smell? No, it doesn't. Slightly underwhelming in that respect, but beautiful, beautiful blooms. And before anybody asks, you can get different coloured blooms for a lot of adeniums. Desert rose technically is what this is known as. And it's interesting because I was seeing a lot of comments online, and I'm kind of looking at it going, does it have some mealybugs? Yes, but it's sitting next to some of my, no, there's quite a few mealybugs on that little section there, bear with. For the people in the know, you know what I'm doing here with my little paintbrush. And tell me down below, actually, if any of you, because I know a lot of people were saying that you were going to do that. Did you do that? Have you seen good results? Are you happy with it? Did you think I was talking rubbish? Let me know. I'm very, very, very curious. But with this, because it's next to a lot of my Hoyas that did have a lot of mealybug issues, I'm aware that it's not a case of if this is going to get mealybugs, but it is going to be a case of when is this going to get mealybugs. And unfortunately, they are kind of all over that plant. Oh, that's annoying. I've just lost a bloom or a bud, but I need to get these mealybugs out from the crevices. So first little bit of a dip. There's a lot of nooks and crannies in this for mealybugs to go and hide, but I might not be telling you stuff that people that have been growing succulents for a while don't already know, because with succulents, a lot of the times, especially if there's nooks and crannies, they do go and find places to go and live their best life. Much to my chagrin. And annoyingly, remember I was saying this was breaking. I think this is broken now, so I'm going to have to fix that. But the point I was trying to make with this is that a lot of people, when I was seeing it online, when they're saying it, in order to get it to bloom, there are so many expert bits of advice online on how to get your adenium to bloom. I'm going to really have to deal with the mealybugs after this. I need to stop doing this during the video. it's like sitting there and popping spots. Stop it. This is one of those things that a lot of people have a lot of opinions about how you get them to bloom. And the thing that I was hearing was the fact that, you know what, it needs to be bone dry before you water it. Otherwise, you're going to get no blooms and things like that. And then people were talking about how you need to treat this in the winter. And I think it's more, the advice is, in order to get it to bloom, if it has never bloomed for you before, these things need to happen throughout the year in order for it to stimulate blooms. That's the bit that I'm saying I can't take credit for this, because I don't know if the growers did certain of these things, like having slightly lower temperatures in the winter, really pulling back on the water almost entirely. It's not a cactus, which would then stimulate bud formation. But I was thinking, you know what, I really need to be careful with this. But then I started losing a couple of the blooms because they were just drying out. This was dry, the blooms were drying out, and I'm just like, it was a situation. So I've got to the point now where I do let this go fully dry, and the moment that I start seeing some of these blooms, and you can see where the crisping happened on that bloom there, it was starting to kind of flop down and get a bit limp. That's the point where I will water and they all perk up again, and then all the other blooms kind of really start coming in. And you might be able to notice the sheer level of buds that are happening on this plant. So yes, so that's one thing that I wanted to show and tell. The next one, I wasn't planning on kind of talking about this, but considering that last time it didn't have any foliage, that is the Adenium baobab, or Adenium arabicum. And last time it was just the little stems, but you can kind of see it in leaf now. Do I think I'm going to get any blooms from this? Probably not. Maybe not this year. I might do some point in the future, but this can also get blooms. This is one of the plants that when it gets the blooms, it can be quite pretty. I've seen some pictures online and it is intense. I'm kind of really looking around on this because, ironically enough, this is the one plant that I saw one aphid on. So I just want to see if there's any other aphids. I can't see, but there's less nooks and crannies with this for things to hide, so it's a lot easier for me to just go, no, 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 you're not meant to be there, you can come off. But yes, the Adenium baobab. Also, for the people that saw my epic watering plant care day video, thank you, because I know that was long. Super annoying, because I'm just sitting there going, ooh, this is going to be one of my first videos. It's going to be like over an hour long, and I'm just like 59 minutes and some change, and I'm just like, no. I like round numbers. I did say on that one that I was going to move the moss pole around on my El Choco Red, which I have done. So this is now moved to the position where it needed to be, and you might be able to see, if I bring this in a bit closer now, because I know on that video it wasn't particularly kind of clear, that was the growth point that I was talking about in that video, and there was the secondary growth point, which is in the end what activated. So I placed it against that one because that looked like it was further along growing. That stopped growing, and then the other one did, and I'm just like, can we stop it? Can we stop it? Because I'm going to have to do it all over again. But I have done it now. I've added a bit of extra sphagnum moss, because there was a bit of a gap between where the aerial roots were coming out from the main growth point in relation to where the moss pole is, so hopefully that will kind of cover that gap. But it's doing really well. It seems to have not really skipped much of a beat. I do think with this one, I might be wrong, correct me if you've grown your El Choco Red up a moss pole. Does it eventually, I'm pretty sure this is one of the plants that will eventually lose the red backs when it grows up. So do let me know. I'm in two minds whether or not I don't mind or I do mind with that, but we shall see. But it's doing relatively well, and I just wanted to show you because I know I mentioned it on that video, and camera was overheating, and I finished filming that day with like 3 minutes of footage that I could still film on the camera before it all kind of like filled up, so just in the nick of time. But yeah, it's doing relatively well. Next, I want to show you a plant that you very rarely see because it's in a very specific shelf and it's tricky to get out, but I did get it out, so it's still going. This is the Anthurium Friedrichsthalii. So remember how I was saying the luxurians was a bit rubbish? I loved the comments from absolutely all of you about the luxurians. I'm just like, what do you think it needs? It needs to go in the bin is what it needs to do. And I'm just like, I'm not entirely going to disagree with you on that one. I know I said, what does it like? And everybody said, I don't remember who made the comment. It was great. It likes being in the bin. And I'm just like, I agree. But yeah, this is a plant that, unlike that one, does really well. And this is a strap leaf Anthurium, as I think you might be able to tell. But in relation to the Vitarifolium that is here, and that is the newest leaf from the Vitarifolium, this, so far, for me, has got much thinner leaves. It has got some relatively chunky aerial roots, or not aerial roots, but you can see the roots if I bring it in a bit closer and hide my face and take away the label maybe. You can hopefully be able to see there. This is considerably smaller roots, so I think this is kind of the way that this plant would grow. It's much narrower leaves. I do think they are getting longer, maybe the tiny bit wider, so you can kind of see that was one of its first leaves, and that was kind of one of the more recent leaves. So it does get a bit wider, and that's the newest leaf growing there. Really, really enjoyed getting this plant, and I cannot tell you how happy I am that I have got it in my collection, because so far it's been okay. It's been okay. It does get a bit like tangly. So let me just untangle really quickly. You know this by now. I do my plant care at the same time as doing the videos because I ain't got no time. I've only half watered my collection today, and it is, it's midday. I need to finish filming, I need to finish watering my collection, and maybe start making lunch soon. So, but I had to deal with the girls of the allotment today, so that's what that was. But yeah, really, really cool plant, and super fun to grow so far. Super fun to grow. It's really, really come into its own this summer. It's growing quite well in semi-hydro. None of the roots have come out, but this has had a water reservoir for most of the winter as well, to be fair. If you want a relatively easy and rewarding pendant anthurium, I would highly recommend. You don't want the big Vitarifolium style one, but you still want the thinner leaves, and they can get quite long. Anthurium Friedrichsthalii. And the next one I managed to get off, because again, I mentioned this during my plant care video day and I just couldn't bring it out, but I have. So that's how bastard the Queremalense is looking. These are the oldest leaves. However, I have never grown such a perfect, and I know there's a split there which is infuriating me to no end because I have babied this in order to get the perfect leaf. But it is very pretty, very, very pretty. It does have relatively thin leaves even when it fully hardens off, but it is good. It's really kind of activated a thicker growing point now, so I think finally it is happy. But other than that, I do have this in, of course, semi-hydro mix, and I'm looking at the roots as well, and I don't know whether or not you're going to be able to see if I tilt it without dropping everything out. You probably won't be able to. They're very, very thin roots. Some of the thinnest roots I have ever seen on an anthurium. So maybe that's part of the reason why this plant doesn't grow particularly well. And I do know a lot of people that have tried to grow this and they haven't had great success. Maybe it's because I have it in semi-hydro, maybe it just needs as much aeration as possible. But I just wanted to show you this leaf because it is a beautiful. Do I recommend this plant to anybody? No, I don't. I'm enjoying growing it now when it gives me leaves like this when they haven't split, but that is more of the reality when you get these kind of very cosmetically ugly leaves. And I know that's not something that a lot of people want in their collections, but the point I'm trying to make is even the ugly ducklings sometimes will turn into swans, and when they do, they are beautiful. But yeah, very, very cool. This one still hasn't hardened off, so I don't want to touch it too much because hissy fits. But yeah, very, very, very cool when it does the right thing. Other than that, that's the reality I think that most people would experience. Talking about new growth, the people that have been for a while, and remember when I got this from the Malvern RHS show, the newest leaf is kind of getting there. It's sizing up finally. So this is the luxurians crossed with not the regal, but the magnificum. And yeah, this is doing quite well. I was hoping it might be slightly faster because of the magnificum, and I think it kind of is, but at the same time, it's not as slow as a proper Anthurium luxurians. I will give you that information for free because that is a very slow growing Anthurium. However, it's doing okay. This poor plant is like the child in the corner, and I don't know if I should say I've said it twice now. I'll put all the beeps in. But yeah, it is one of those plants that just sits there like the little rejected child at the corner on my floor of my conservatory, because I still don't have anywhere to put this. And I know, before anybody says this, Ecuagenera has currently got a sale going on, and I am very purposely not looking at their website. Also, to put that in context, the other reason why I'm not looking at their website at the moment is because I have a very sneaky suspicion, even if I ordered now from the sale, they would be shipping at the end of August, beginning of September, I would guess, based on past experiences. There used to be a point, I think, where Ecuagenera would be sending plants out every month, and invariably I would kind of order and it would be the next month, and invariably there'd be delays, so it'd be 2 months later. So I've never got anything within a month of ordering from Ecuagenera, so bear that in mind. But the reality is, and actually heads up for everybody in terms of content, I might film a whole bunch of things and edit it before I go, so you've got some content, or it might be a couple of off weeks basically. But I am taking an actual holiday and going back to Greece for 2 weeks at the beginning of September, just to switch off for a couple of weeks and go and lie on a beach and go and swim in the sea, which I have not done. I have been back a few times now, mainly to see family, but I have not done the beach thing where I can just sit back and relax for a bit since before the pandemic. I am due a beach holiday, and again, I know there's a lot of privilege for me being able to say this, but I would like a beach holiday. I've not had one for years. Let's look at a slightly sadder story. This is my Begonia brevirimosa subspecies Exotica, which had pretty much, I think, either fully dried out last summer or had root rot. I can't remember which one of the two, and I just chucked whatever I could see that was surviving and put it in a prop box. Promptly forgot that it was even there for a year, and then I had some growth points that I put into soil, and I've regrew it, and this isn't far off. Like, it's about half the size of what my other one used to be after growing it for years. So this one's done well. It's kind of bounced back, but I don't know if you can kind of see the crispiness that is happening there. You should be able to see the crispiness there. Definitely on these leaves here. Unfortunately, when I was talking about the heat wave, oh, there you go, you can see that's probably going to be the clearest there. When I was saying heat wave, this is right at the top of the shelf, and I hadn't realized, even though there was a lot of moisture still in the soil, it didn't really dry out. It was so close to those windows that got so scorchingly hot that it just burnt the leaves. But you know what? The new leaves that are coming through are completely and utterly fine. So I've got high hopes for this plant. And it's interesting because nobody ever talks about this, but everybody's always just like, the Begonia maculata whitei, the polka dot begonia, and variants of that type of look are so easy and they can grow really, really well. This one, which is also obviously a stem begonia, it's not a rhizomatous begonia, as far as I'm aware anyway, grows like a weed. And in my humblest of opinions, I do love the polka dot begonia. It was one of the first plants that I ever owned. I think for me this is more interesting. Like, you've got an entire pinkish, winey pink coloured plant, which you can't beat. Like, this looks like, if it wasn't as crispy as it looks right now, but this would almost look fake. People would come in, and I know a lot of people don't necessarily want that, but I think if you can get an actual natural plant that is not a Ficus plasticus, that isn't a plastic or like a fake plant, to look so unreal that people don't assume that it's a real plant, I like that. That's kind of slight bragging rights there. For me, in my opinion, it's just a bit like, they were just like, oh yeah, you're fake plant there. I'm just like, it's not fake. They're just like, what do you mean it's not fake? Like, look at it. And I'm just like, I know, it's a beautiful and weird. And it's not green, essentially. But very, very, very cool plant nonetheless. I will say, because that does come up as a question a lot of the time, some people are just like, most of mine is really green and it doesn't have too much pink. This pretty much has always got the highest light level that I can give it. Think if you've ever grown a philodendron Florida Ghost, you know, that kind of notion that it needs as much bright indirect light as you can possibly give it, needs to be near a grow light. This is another begonia that I would say is the same. A lot of the begonias want slightly more filtered light. This one, yes, it will potentially go crispy like I've shown you on those leaves, but that's where you get the truly really pink foliage. Again, based on what I've experienced in my care, in my collection. All right, let's have a look at something that looks like it's on the struggle bus, but it should be okay. And at least from what I can see from the roots, it's going to bounce back. This is the Monstera partita. I can't remember. Pinatillobum, baby Pinatillobum. I'll add the name. I cannot remember. This is a recent purchase. I remember people were saying you need to give it a moss pole, and it was doing great on a moss pole. And it reached the top of this moss pole, and it was coming off as well. And I was hoping to be able to keep it and grow it a similar way that Sydney plant guy would do, where it cuts and then props and all these things. But I couldn't in the end. But it was rooted out in the moss pole at so many different sections that I just chopped up all the different sections that had their own root system. They've all gone into here. So I've now got 1, 2, 3. Ooh, there is a node activating. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 growth points from the one plant. Yes, it's not gone high yet, but I have added it next to its own moss pole. I've given it a much larger moss pole at the moment. Would this have been better before, like, for us to not have a heat wave? Yes, but when do things ever go according to plan? Ever in life. Life's what happens when you're making plans. Yes, yes. But it's doing relatively well. As I said, you might be able to see some of the yellowing at the tips of the leaves. One of the sections, which is, where is it? This one? This one. That very soft and floppy leaf there had no roots. And I know it's almost kind of sacrilegious for most of us, but this is how a lot of the growers would do it. Down a bit of rooting powder on just a bare node, no roots or anything like that, and shoved it in the soil with the rest of them and hope for the best. It's a Monstera. At the end of the day, it's a Monstera. It should have the tenacity to want to live, and based on how quickly this grew, I'm not worried. I've also given it a much larger moss pole, so hopefully it will root in and it will do its thing. But because I've got so many growth points now, watch 1 or 2 of them just not attach. And then I have a mare of a day. But yeah, this one is doing really well. Some of the yellowing might be because of the hot sun and the heat wave that we had, but it's doing okay. And the point I'm trying to make by showing you this, I'm also looking for pests at the same time. Sorry, I should be looking at you and not the plant, but you know why. One of the things with this is that it's going to look a bit busted when you do an aggressive chop and prop like what I've done. But you know what? It will bounce back. I have got no worries about this. Next little update that I want to give you is this plant. And this is the Philodendron atabapoense. And I'll show you all the lovely maroony red backs on this. And I've given this a moss pole. I've heard a lot of stories about this. I have grown it okay for the last year. This was from the unboxing that I did from Kaylee Ellen and the Rare Plant Shop's rescue boxes. As I mentioned, I think I might have kind of mentioned it on other videos, pretty much everything I got in that box did really well. It's just the forgetii, which is annoying considering that now people are just like, your forgetii is not forgetii-ing. That was probably a true forgetii. That did not make it. My forgetii who's not forgetii-ing is doing okay. That's the only plant that didn't do well. This one did really well. There were so many growth points. It was so long. I chopped and propped it. And it's doing really well. I mean, the plant is happy, but I think everybody was saying, give it a moss pole and then you might start getting some slightly larger leaves. It really isn't giving me larger leaves. And I know this has to now detach from the moss pole. I really should give it, I should really do the air layering with this and chop it and put it back in. And I mean, I'm actually enjoying this. The reality is, would I like the leaves on this to be a bit larger? Yes. However, I'm enjoying this more than I thought I was going to. And that is the really cool thing about rescue boxes, is that because you don't know what you're getting, it's kind of a bit more exciting because you're just like, ooh, very cool. I might get something that I don't have, or I might get 3 of the same thing that I've already got. That's the risk that you take. But when you get things that you don't have and you weren't really ever planning on adding to your collection and they surprise you, that's a really cool thing about the rescue boxes. Barring, and a whole bunch of other things obviously that are good about rescue boxes, but this is a plant that I never really wanted to add to my collection. I had no desire to add this. I did have the Billietier, and that's the one that I really wanted, and that one's growing quite well. Maybe for the next update I'll try to like take it out from where it is and show you, but that one I'm getting some Houseplant leaves on. But this is one that I've enjoyed growing. But yeah, I think the majority of the reason why I wanted to show you is, please, does anybody have any advice on how I maybe get it to size up, or is everybody else experiencing the same issues that I am? And I'll wrap up with an Anthurium that you all haven't seen for a relatively long time, whilst I spot some more mealybugs. Story of my life whenever I do any plant care, by the way. Half of the time is me taking mealybugs off things. The Anthurium pinkleyi. I know you haven't seen this for a while since I kind of unboxed it, but really, really cool. As what I was saying about the like Tesla plant kind of vibes of this, it really does, like, look at that. And ironically enough, I got this thinking it was going to be more of that cup shaped, and it doesn't really do that. It is more of a Tesla situation. But can you see the level of growth that's happening? This has pupped like mad. There is one growth point in there and 3 pups that are all doing equally well. You can see what the immature leaves look like there. Nothing to write home about, but then they turn into that beast there. So really, really well. Ugh, no, I do not want an inflorescence. Bye-bye. It is one of those plants that I've kind of neglected. It's very feral. This is the first time I've kind of moved it a bit more so it faces me rather than it faces the window, because it was very easy for me to just kind of ignore. But yeah, this is a plant now that I'm seeing a bit more. I'm kind of taking care of it a bit better than I have done. But even when I wasn't, it was doing quite well. I'm trying to think here, has it got any other pests? No, it doesn't. Was that any? Ugh, mealybugs. Anybody else gets really annoyed with your Anthuriums when they've got that kind of like nook at the very top where the leaf meets the petiole, and then you get mealybugs stuck right there in the little ditch? But yeah, sorry, that wasn't the point I was trying to make. This isn't a section that I talk about mealybugs, but invariably I'm going to. It's a plant that not a lot of people know and not a lot of people would normally kind of be looking for, but actually highly recommend. Been super, super fun to grow, hasn't been particularly difficult. Do the petioles have anything interesting about them? No, there's a tiny bit of a blush, which you might be able to see there. It's kind of slightly on the pinkish side of things. The leaves don't come up in any interesting color, but like you can, whilst I try not to drop everything down, you should be able to see the roots there. Semi-hydro with cashpo. It has always had a reservoir, and it seems to be loving life completely and utterly. Very, very, very cool plant. Would highly recommend. And I do, I'm aware, I'm an enabler. I'm really sorry. If this gets annoying and you don't want me to show you stuff that you don't have already and you end up spending more money, please do let me know, although I don't know what I would show then. But do you know what I mean? I tend to have weird things that most people don't have, so by default you'll probably see more on my channel that most people don't have. I do have the stuff that everybody else does as well, because they're good fun to grow. But you know me, I love an underdog, and I love a weird and unusual. Maybe it's because I was the unique, as my friend used to say. They're just like freak. They're just like, no, you're just unique. I'm just like, freak is a freak and unique. Different ways to say the same thing. The other thing that I can't show you because I can't really move it too easily. Hopefully I'll be able to get a picture and kind of show you here. And this is more of a request in case anybody has some experience with this. I've had it on other Epipremnums, but I've never had it on this one. It's a shame because I was so happy to get it in my care. Although, that's a good point. There was big ones on moss poles that came out recently. This is for my UK audience and Grow Tropicals, and I'm talking about the Epipremnum Skeleton Key. There was also, I noticed very cheekily, because not that many people know about it, remember the Piper sarmentosum, the one that's like edible? Oh, amazing plant. They had some of those back in stock as well, so I would not sleep on that one for too long. I need to probably get a second one as well because I'm really enjoying growing that. But unfortunately, my skeleton key, half of the leaves that were up the moss pole have yellowed off and dropped off. I was aware that I've left it in the growing media and it was a bit dense, so my worry that it was having some rot, and I kind of repotted it, gave it some of a chunkier mix, and I think the rot didn't go away entirely. At some point recently I just went nuclear on it, took it out, took all the soil off just to make sure if there was any rot, and there really wasn't any rot whatsoever. So I do not know why the leaves, the bottom leaves are yellowing, the top leaves are still okay and they're doing quite well. They're still doing the skeleton-y key thing. I do need to probably chop and prop that just so I've got a safety because I'm worried that it might not make it. But anybody got any ideas for this? And this is the point I was trying to make is I've got other epipremnums that do this, and occasionally when you get 1 or 2 yellow leaves throughout it, and it's predominantly because they may be growing out of, like they might just be coming to the end of those lives, the leaves, and it doesn't really ever cause an issue. But with this one, it's progressing fast. It's not root rot, I have checked. I am wondering if anybody is growing this or if anybody's experienced this with other epipremnums. As I said, I don't think this has ever happened on any of my other epipremnums. Am I getting some leaf loss and yellowing of leaves because maybe I'm just letting it dry out? Because I got to the point where I was letting it dry out fully before I would then flush it just to make sure that it wasn't rot. So I don't know if that was actually causing more issues than not. If you're growing this plant, is it a bit more moisture loving than other epipremnums? Please, please, please let me know down below because I would love to save that plant. But yeah, I think that is everything I wanted to say in this video. Hopefully you're enjoying these kind of like update videos. I'm enjoying making them because I can actually bring up my plants and it's a bit show and telly. I kind of grew up in a country where we didn't really ever have, I think, is it a thing still in America from what I can see from the TV? Show and tell. We didn't really have anything like show and tell back home. But this feels like what that would be, like me picking up things, showing you and telling you about them. But yes, hopefully you enjoy it. I'm rambling. I love these videos though, because I think this is the one time that I can kind of talk to you as if I'm talking to like a whole bunch, which you are, pretty much all my like planty friends. And I feel like I can kind of catch up with you all. But yes, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. Let me know down below if any of these surprised you, if you've got any feedback for me or anything that you think like maybe I should be doing differently with some of these plants or that you're doing differently, and I'd love to have that conversation. And yeah, hopefully you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.